You had previously said that you thought that you would have won. Since then, Donald Trump won all the battleground states and made inroads with almost every major demographic, from working class voters to Hispanic men to black men. Knowing what you know now, do you think you would have beat him?
Yeah, he still got 7 million fewer votes.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people didn't show up. Number one. Number two, they're very close in those toss-up states. It wasn't a slam dunk.
You see why it's slugged the way it is? In a very long, slow interview, ladies of The View, Joe Biden tripled down on his claim that he would have won the election against Donald Trump had he stayed in the race. He just believes this, folks. Ironically, right after making that statement, he commended The View for not focusing so much on the polls, which makes sense since polling on the day he dropped out of the race showed him getting absolutely crushed. So let's not focus on that. The approval rating, how about that? Right before dropping out was a paltry 36%. Wow. Okay, we do have more from Biden's first interview since Trump took office, but first, Cenk, your thoughts here? I don't know why he keeps coming back like this.
I think I do. Money. And I'm not being facetious or I'm not trying to be mean, but we covered this in a story earlier. He's trying to make $300,000 a speech and he's having trouble doing it. So he wants to get out there and burnish his credentials, at least in the eyes of people. I mean, obviously he's got enormous credentials. He's vice president, president, senator for about 250 years, et cetera. But his image has taken an enormous blow. So part of the reason he wants to get out there is to show people that he can still speak. So it's okay, they can hire him for speaking engagements. And then of course, he cares about his legacy. And that's why we're asking the poll question. Are these interviews helping or hurting his legacy? I don't think he's doing himself any favors out there. I think, it's not a good look, but he won't stop. And look, part of it is the mental decline. And the fact that Jill Biden's still pushing him out there is unconscionable. Because I only blame her because, and Hunter, those are two people, according to all the press reports, he listens to. And he almost won't listen to anyone else. So apparently they're telling him, green light, family needs money, keep going, right? How else is Hunter gonna get gas contracts in different countries? So I think it's kind of sick what's happening. But let's be honest, Sharon, the other part of it is he's an enormous egomaniac. And so he can't wait to go out there and tell everybody how he would have won. And he doesn't get that it's making him look worse because now that we pulled the curtain back and we saw the true Wizard of Oz, sorry, brother, it's too late. We can't put the curtain back and pretend that you're some sort of demigod as Democrats and mainstream media were doing. We saw who you were. So that's why this is never going to help you. It's only going to be more embarrassing.
Yeah, I tend to believe the second is more powerful than the first. Having a little bit of experience just, caring for parents who weren't themselves. You are who you are. And then those parts of your personality become more magnified and even angry, feisty, if you will. I kind of think perhaps they're not giving him the truth, or maybe I just want to believe that, Jill and Hunter. They're just co-signing, and it's him saying, I know what I'm doing. I'm going out there. Because it's hard. And I'm not making an excuse. There's more to this interview, even though Joe Biden still insists he would have beaten Trump. He told The View that he wasn't surprised by the results of the election.
Why do you think the vice president lost, and were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised, not because I didn't think the vice president's the most qualified person to be president. She is. She's qualified to be president of the United States of America. Right. But I was surprised. I wasn't surprised because they went the route of the sexist route, the whole route. I mean, this is a woman. She's this. She's that. I mean, it really. I've never seen quite as successful and a consistent campaign undercutting the notion that a woman couldn't lead the country and a woman of mixed race. I was very disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. The only thing that surprised me is the excess to which they've gone in some of the attacks they've made. Yeah.
was also pressed on whether his decision so late to drop out of this thing hurt Kamala Harris. And on this one, he got the timeline completely wrong.
Some have even argued that leaving the race and endorsing your Vice President Harris, over 100 days before the election hampered her campaign.
Well, you know,
what do you say to those critics?
I say, number one, that there were still 6 full months. She was in every aspect, every decision I made, every decision we made. And I don't think, I hope I didn't sound the wrong way. I don't think anybody thought we'd be successful as we were. I don't think anybody thought we'd pass the Recovery Act. I don't think anybody thought we'd deal with CHIPS and Science Act. I don't think anybody think we'd have all we got done.
In fact, Biden only gave Harris about 100 days to set her own campaign apart from his. And did she ever really do that? I mean, she had to kind of marry herself to his policies. Ironically, later in this interview, both Joe and Jill Biden denied extensive reports that Joe Biden's cognitive abilities declined significantly in his final year as president. But to give Biden a bit of credit here, he did take some responsibility, some, for where the country is now.
When you announced that you wouldn't be seeking re-election, only 28% of the country thought that the country was on the right track. Now, you are understandably very proud of many achievements in your administration, but do you take any responsibility for not hearing the concerns of voters on the border security or cost of living sooner? And do you take any responsibility for Trump's re-election?
Yes, I do, because look, I was in charge and he won. So, I take responsibility.
Okay, well, I mean, that's something, Cenk. I sometimes think about George W. Bush and how he was run out of Washington, tail between the legs, after serving 2 terms. But then he went away and he just kind of lived. And I understand he's much younger than Joe Biden, but he's not viewed the same way as he was when he left. And Joe Biden just does not want to go that route at all. I understand the money, but it's just, as you said, every answer seems to make it worse, or at least cement the worst thoughts about him.
Yeah. So I'm going to read some of our member comments first, because I think they made some interesting points. And then I want to give you a couple more points about this that are so relevant to what he's saying. Because I think he's doing some damage for the future here, not for him, but for Democrats, minorities, etc. So first, YouTube member Kina writes in, Biden needs to just go away for F's sake. Screet writes in, Biden needs subtitles. And Pixie Erskine McKay writes in, I'm now glad that they kept Reagan away from cameras towards the end. This is horrible to watch. So, by the way, you could be a YouTube member too by hitting the join button below and be part of the show. We do it live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every day. And then we got interviews after 8. We got Joe Walsh tonight. Obviously, I had Marjorie Taylor Greene earlier this week. Okay, now to Biden's points. First of all, the I would have won stuff. So at one point he was down by 9 points. And in order to win the swing states, you have to be up by about 4 or 5 points if you're a Democrat. So that was an unrecoverable hole. Sharon showed you the polling in the 30s, unrecoverable. Every political professional knows an incumbent in the 30s is totally unrecoverable. And then finally his own team, after they finally confessed and gave up, said that according to their calculations, if Biden had stayed in the race, Trump would have won over 400 electoral college votes. It would have been an epic landslide that went way beyond the swing states. He is completely and utterly delusional, even according to his own staffers and his most internal team. So there's no one on planet Earth who agrees with him that he could have won, unless again you were an MSNBC viewer for a long time and they got you to believe it and you can't let it go. So now, but how delusional they are about their accomplishments is in some ways grates on my nerves more. No one could have believed what we were going to get accomplished. I don't know what you're talking about. Like I kept saying, guys, the things that they claim were FDR 2.0 and miraculous and amazing. Can you believe we got the CHIPS Act passed, etc. Like it's tiny. It's not nearly enough, and it's not to the average guy. You constantly are giving to the wrong people. which are of course coincidentally your donors. So CHIPS Act is a good example. It was a subsidy over $50 billion. Where did it go? Corporations. They didn't have any guardrails so they don't fire anybody afterwards. No, it went to the semiconductor and the chip people. Intel was one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest benefactor, if I remember right, certainly one of the biggest. And right afterwards, they fired like 8,000 people. And like, haha, suckers, you didn't put any restrictions in there. I just took all the money. And yes, we might have needed to subsidize that particular industry because of national security issues. But do you think it animated the American people? Like Democrats were going around, like Democratic leaders were going around like fools going, oh, we passed the CHIPS Act. We're gonna win re-election so easy. FDR 2.0, we're so popular. I'm like, nobody even knows the CHIPS Act. And no, they're not thrilled that you gave $50 billion in subsidies to giant corporations. And no, this is not big, giant change. The one good thing was they put a lot of, or a decent amount of the Green New Deal in the last bill. Guess what Trump's doing? He's taking it all out. So then at the end, what do we have left? Oh, we did infrastructure. That's not bad. And you need internet in places, roads and bridges rebuilt. I'm happy about that. And what did they do? Private partner, public partnerships so that giant corporations can build those roads and then charge us tolls on those roads. No, people hate tolls. What are you doing? And let alone the fact that they never saw any of that reconstruction and you never talked about it. So he was just a hot mess all around. And this culture in DC of ass kissing drives me crazy. And every time you go, hey guys, that's not that big and accomplished. Oh, you want Trump to win? You better kiss Biden's ass right now and say the CHIPS Act was the greatest bill ever passed. And the American people love it. But I saw the polling, the American people don't love it. In fact, they don't even know it. So you're making that stuff up. And then when someone tells the truth, they're like, you better not. You better consider Joe Biden's young and dynamic. Remember Robert Hur, the prosecutor came out and said he didn't do anything wrong, but talking to him over these couple of days, you could tell that he was an old, man struggling to remember details, etc. And they were like, how dare you, Robert Hur? And it wasn't just Democrats, it was mainstream media. It was that show in particular, The View. The View is the very worst show on being truthful with their audience. If like when Joe Biden did it, they're like, Joe Biden's the greatest. And what happened? Okay, can the Democrats on The View, can they, for God's sake, be honest once and admit you guys were wrong? You told everyone to stick with Joe Biden, and that cost us the election. We weren't helping Trump when we were trying to get a better candidate. You were helping Trump. I'm not sure that there's a single show in America that helped Trump more than The View did. They're like, keep the worst candidate, keep the one who can't talk, keep the one that's feeble and in obvious mental decline. Because we're in the business of kissing his ass and we make money kissing his ass and we trick our audience into thinking Democratic leaders are amazing. Well, then why the hell did Kamala Harris lose all swing states? Why did she lose the popular vote? Why was Joe Biden a disaster and would have done even worse? How many times are you gonna lie to people? Now, finally, we get to the part where Joe Biden said, well, I would have won. Of course I would have won. But now here's an inconvenient part. But Kamala Harris lost and she lost badly. So are you saying that Kamala blew it? Well, you can't say that because you have to kiss both asses because they're both leaders, they're both powerful, right? So since they can't say that Kamala was a terrible candidate, which she was, and they have to pretend that Joe Biden would have won, okay, because you have to kiss both asses on the right and the left, okay? I don't mean politically, I mean cheeks. So then you're in this uncomfortable situation. How are you gonna get out of it? Because how could Joe Biden have won and Kamala be a great candidate, but she got annihilated? Oh, I got an idea. It's not because of that they ran poor campaigns and they were unpopular. It's because racism and sexism. Now, is it at least a little bit tougher for a black woman to get elected president? I would be surprised if it wasn't, okay? But when you lean on that as the only reason why Kamala Harris lost, what are you doing? You're making it much harder for a woman to run next time, and for a black person to run next time, and certainly for a black woman to run next time. Because you said the only reason she lost was because of racism and sexism. So do you think the Democratic voters, after listening to that propaganda on The View, are gonna pick a black woman next? No, they're gonna be like, oh, remember, the only reason Kamala lost is because she's a black woman. Wow, that is super damaging. And by the way, it's not even close to true. On the issue of whether Americans will vote for a black person, I don't know, like, did I miss it? What, or did they miss it? Do we live in the same reality? Barack Obama was president for 8 years. When he, in his first inauguration, his polling was, his favorable numbers were at 83%. And yes, people knew his middle name was Hussein. So don't tell me a black person can't win. And Hillary and Kamala Harris would have won if they were much better candidates. The problem wasn't that they were a woman, the problem was that they were terrible candidates. But if you're in the ass kissing business, you can't say that. You have to pretend, if you're on The View, that Hillary Clinton was an amazing candidate, Joe Biden was an amazing candidate, and Kamala Harris was an amazing candidate. So that's why they lied to their audience. And by the way, increase the hatred in the country by going, oh, you can't trust white people. They're all racist, they're all sexist. They would never vote for a woman, they would never vote for a black person. That's cancerous, man. So, all right, Sharon, you're a black woman, so let me give you the last word here on your perspective.
I think you're spot on. You covered some of those rallies, I did too, when Obama was soaring. And do you know how many white people, young people were in those crowds? I mean, come on. But I think the ladies of The View did something else that was completely dishonest. They know it, they heard it too. You know, I saw some of it up close here in Atlanta. It wasn't just that Joe Biden left her with just 100 days. And I'm not saying that she would have won, but his campaign staff and money people were largely left in place for much of it and were guiding, if you will, her and protecting him, which you can't do if you're trying to win. She was never allowed to break away from him and the record or whatever. So I just think all of it is so, it's a facade. It's not real. It's the fakest interviewing. Nobody asked about that, about the money, the senior advisors, the staff holding her back. They were just there, it seemed, to maybe collect the money and go along for the ride. And let's see, he didn't drop out, first of all, because he had all these people who were with him for decades and decades who were never gonna tell the truth. But I just think it was worse than him waiting too long. It was after that too, the behind the scenes stuff as well. I think that should have been a question. I think the mental, the cognitive decline I would have asked that. Look, you don't seem to be who you were 30 years ago. None of us do, but that performance on that debate stage where Donald Trump made sense and pointed to him and said, I don't know what he just said and I don't think he does either. Can we not talk about that? You have to. He's coming on the show, you have to, but they're never gonna do it.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.